Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host Nick, and in this episode, I want to wish everyone a happy Easter for all those Christians who celebrated this weekend. Of course, the Greek Orthodox Easter is about a month out, so I'm still waiting to sink my teeth into some delicious lamb, but I am enjoying all of the other Easter candy that is now on sale. Also, we're going to recap the Atlanta United match against the Chicago Fire, the real reason we're all here, to hear my takes on all of that. We're also going to look ahead to the Fire's next match, a home game against the Houston Dynamo. And we're going to just say that my Major League Soccer Lord's Prayer that I had at the end of last week's episode did not go well for the Chicago Fire. And we're going to talk about all of it in this episode, so stay tuned. Hey soccer fans, this is Nick again on the Feed the Fire podcast, sponsored by Glass House Soccer and Skira Icelandic Spring Water. I want to thank you for joining me again this week as we break down what happened in the Chicago Fire's loss at Atlanta United, and we look ahead to try to have some hope against the Fire's next opponent, the Houston Dynamo. Want to take care of some housekeeping real quick first. I want to give a big thank you to one of our regular listeners, Ryan. He actually put together an MLS fantasy group titled Feed the Fire Listeners, so make sure if you want to join in on all the fantasy MLS fun, please do so. Join the league, look it up, it's an open group. Want to thank Ryan for doing that, and also please do so, because maybe with more people joining, I might have a chance to beat somebody, because I am terrible at MLS fantasy. I don't think I've had a week go by where I've had a full 11 players play. I can't get to every player availability before the game start, and had Cucho Hernandez starting as my striker this week, so obviously did not do well there. The other thing that's always hamstringing me, I think, is just out of principle, I will never start a player who's playing against the Chicago Fire on my fantasy team, so lost a lot of points that way as well. So make sure you go find Ryan's league, Feed the Fire Listeners, and thanks Ryan for putting that together. Another big thank you to Jose, who's always given feedback on the Spotify polls. I appreciate you listening, letting me know that you're okay with the long episodes. And tonight might be a bit of a longer one, so stay tuned, Jose. Thanks. Also want to recognize another listener, Anthony from Detroit. Yeah, he's my cousin, but he still gets a shout out because he's listening, and I'm slowly winning him over as a Chicago Fire fan. But he wanted to let everyone know that Detroit City is now 3-0, and thank you for the loan on Becerra, though he hasn't played yet in Detroit. By the way, I went to a Detroit City game with Anthony a couple seasons back, and man, a lot of fun. The march to the match, the pregame festivities, being in the stadium, and we just happened to be there. It was local craft brewery day, so they had all the food trucks and all the little local craft breweries had their own little trucks and set up there, and it was a lot of fun and a lot of beer. By the way, Detroit City FC has won all three of their matches 2-1 under first-year head coach Danny Dichio. And some of you may know him from his time in England, his lengthy career there, or others of the MLS persuasion may remember him as the player that scored the very first goal in Toronto FC history in 2007 against the Chicago Fire. And we have come full circle now back to the Chicago Fire. Also, Danny Dichio got the first ever red card for TFC in that same match, so had himself a memorable day as well for the Reds up in TFC. But yes, we're back full circle to the Chicago Fire, talking about their dismal performance at Atlanta United. Now, if you want to go by the eye test, there was no offense, but even worse, there were no ideas on offense. Kuipers was ineffective. He had no service, so it's not like it was completely his fault. There were a couple times he dropped deep to try and get some touches on the ball, and there was one play where he ended up getting a shot off and just rocketed one. Looked to me like it hit just the outside of the near post before banging into the boards with a loud thwack. And you could tell how much pace was on it if it did hit the post and then hit the boards with such sound. He is as frustrated as anyone that he is not scoring more goals, or at least getting more shots off from this Fire offense here. So he's not the problem because he will get a shot off when he can get the ball. And that's the key, when he can get the ball. The other thing, Martin Haile Selassie, I am starting to get frustrated with him. As much as we liked him last season for his link-up play along the right side, how well he was working with Shaqiri or Suke, and the fact that he led the team with 6 goals, he had a good season last year. But you know what? He is a shoot-first winger. He keeps getting too centrally, and it keeps getting too close to Kuipers, and he needs to try and create for the striker. Because, yeah, he had 6 goals last year, but you know what? He wasn't that good of a finisher. He still isn't that good of a finisher. I would like to see him out wide, stretching that defense so there can be some more balls played directly to Kuipers, either from him on the wing or some through balls played by the attacking midfielders. And we've seen Kuipers being double and even triple teamed at times this season. And if Selassie is going to pinch in, then it just makes defending Kuipers that much easier for the opposing team. He needs to be out wide, and that's why I think Mueller needs to be starting. He'll be, as they say, a chalk on the boots winger. The other issue we saw with the offense, at least from the eye test perspective here, Brian Gutierrez seems to have continued his regression from a very, very good start in that game against Philly. He's afraid to take on defenders one-on-one. He's been passing the ball too early instead of trying to take 1 or 2 more touches into space, drawing defenders out. I think he's afraid to lose the ball. And as a result of it, most of his passes are lateral or back passes. He's not trying to take the lid off the defense. He's not trying to play through the defenders with the skill that he has, and definitely not trying to take anyone on off the dribble. He's not even looking for his shot anymore. That opening goal that he scored against the Philadelphia Union, where he just picked his head up and said, "This is it, I'm shooting," he needs to do that a lot more. We saw Haile Selassie do it for only just to try and get a shot off. Not that he really expected to score that long distance one against Guzan. But at least he wanted to take a shot there. Those are the things that Gutierrez needs to be doing while Haile Selassie pushes out on the wing. And at least that's my opinion from what I am seeing. Also, the defense has forgotten how to play defense, right? And they look slow. Chihos looks his age and his mileage. Turan still is not 100% match fit. And he's going to get another week to get match fit because he will not be playing in the Fire's next match after a second half red card where he just, again, this is just undisciplined, lazy tackling here. Undisciplined, lazy defense. Just puts his foot, his cleats, right into the calf of the opposing player. No attempt to win the ball. Just trying to, like, it's not even reckless or with malintent. Like, he just steps on the other player. To me, this is not only a product of him being extremely tired and not match fit, not mentally fit. It's a lack of discipline, and it's something that Klopas has not been able to get out of Carlos Turan. You saw Turan have a little bit more discipline with Hendrickson, and I think that was also a product of C.J. Brown being in his ear constantly and Rafa Chihos being in his ear constantly. But Chihos can't be that guy anymore, and he's not that guy anymore because he's got to worry about his own game at this point, and there's no one who can keep Turan in check on the coaching staff. So that's a problem that's going to continue, assuming Turan is still on the squad, if he doesn't already have a foot out the door in Europe. But he's got to play better, otherwise you're not going to get those good offers coming in. I was really trying to find a positive in this match to kind of talk about something on the eye test, but I'll tell you, it was really hard to watch this game for the full 90 minutes plus stoppage time. The Fire's play was so lackadaisical and lazy and so just safe. Just kept playing it around and never really trying to get the ball into a dangerous area, to play the ball in the box, that I found my eyes drifting. Oh, what are my kids doing? Oh, did I get another notification on my phone? Like, that is what was going through my head, and it was really hard to watch the game, let's be honest. I guess maybe the one good thing is they switched from zone marking to man marking on the set pieces. At least they didn't get scored on in set pieces, right? The other thing I got to say, too, and I'm being absolutely negative because of how bad the performance was, right? And yes, generally, I have a negative disposition on things. Maybe it's the lawyer in me, right? Maybe it's the Chicago sports fan in me. I don't know. But after this game, I think it's all deserved. One of the other things I got to say, the captain's armband should not be with Fabian Herbers. He was not a leader on the field. In fact, he had the potential to get tossed with card accumulation in this game because he was complaining to the ref. He had some bad tackles. He's lucky that he didn't pick up a red card in this game. He is not a leader on the pitch. I don't know if he's a leader in the locker room, but from what I can tell, he got the armband because of his tenure with the team and his recent run of form. Shaqiri had the armband because he's the name. I don't know if he's a leader in the locker room. He's definitely a personality in the locker room, which does not equate to leadership skills. I said it in the last episode. I think Gutierrez should have gotten the armband. I think Pineda should have gotten the armband. But he didn't get to start this match. I don't know if they're just trying to manage some minutes for him, or if Klopas liked some sort of matchup out there, or didn't like a matchup with Pineda, or he wanted to keep him in reserve for Tehran. I'm not sure. But honestly, if Pineda can get the armband and be a bit more of a vocal leader, I'd be all for it. Heck, I'd be all for Chris Mueller getting the armband for it. Give it to Chris Brady, for Pete's sake, here, right? Because there is no leadership on the field that we're seeing on top of all of the lack of good play. Now, the other discussion that's been going on around social media with Fire fans is who's to blame for the Chicago Fire having 4 points through 6 games this season? Who's to blame for just the continued malaise and the poor offense and the lack of defensive intensity and all this stuff? And when you look, I just think generally, when you look at a sports team, if you want to start playing the blame game, and yeah, let's play the blame game here, right? It's a fan podcast. You start with the players and work your way up. You start with the players, and then you get to the coaching staff, then you get to the front office, and then you get to the ownership. That's how I tend to look at it. And that's the course over a number of years before you get from players to the front office, right? So over the last several years of the Chicago Fire failure to make the playoffs, and we can just take it back to 27 if you want to, but we know the problems have been further back than that. You have seen the roster turned over. I think the only player on the roster from 2017 has been Fabian Herbers, and I think that was his first year with the Chicago Fire in 2017. You don't have guys who've been on the team longer than 2-3 years otherwise. So the roster has been turned over, and specifically this past winter transfer window, you saw improvements at the left back position, though Gutman and Gasper are both injured and out. And Dean has been playing serviceable. You saw an upgrade at the right back position with Aragoni. You saw depth built at the center back position with Salquist and Pineda getting the extension. He can play center back or defensive mid. You saw the improvement in the defensive mid position, adding Kellen Acosta. And you saw an upgrade at the striker position with Hugo Kuipers being added. So you not only have seen a turnover in roster, but you've seen an improvement in roster. So the talent has improved, but the results have stayed the same or been even worse. So let's now move up to the coaching level. Over the last 3 coaches, Frank Klopas, Ezra Hendrickson, and Raphael Wicki, you have not had a playoff caliber team. Now, I think the issue with Raphael Wicki was he wanted to play a style that didn't suit the players that were on the roster. And I think there was a disconnect between how the front office was building a roster and how he was coaching it. By all accounts, he's still a good coach. So I think that was the situation there. And correct me if I'm wrong. If there's anything else that you've seen out there, fans, or you disagree with my take on Wicki, then please email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and send me a message there. All social media at GlassHouseSoccer. I think that was the issue there. Ezra Hendrickson wanted to play a certain style with wingbacks pushing forward, getting involved in the attack, playing in a lot of crosses, starting the offense there. He was very defensive-minded in his first season while they tried to adjust the roster a little bit. And then in his second season, he tried to be more attacking, and you saw the defense suffer. You saw the results suffer, and you saw his job status suffer as he was let go for Frank Klopas. Now, Frank Klopas has said it's hard to change a team's tactics mid-season. Well, I just think you're not trying hard enough, or that you don't know enough about tactics, because yes, you absolutely can change a team's tactics midway through the season, or at least try to instill some new ideas of how they want to play, or how you'd want them to play. And with Klopas being named as the full-time manager coming into this season, there were not a lot of high hopes for, at least for me, for him to be playing a better, more attractive style of soccer, a more results-oriented style of soccer, right? But now you've got your time as the interim coach, you've got the full offseason, and you have an upgraded roster, and you have not changed your approach to anything. And that is, to me, the biggest problem where we stand right now. There are people out there who are saying, oh, you're giving Heights a pass, you're giving Pelzer a pass, they're the ones who hired Klopas. Yeah, but I really think it's just a short-term type of thing until they can go out and find a real coach, quote-unquote, or the guy who's going to take them to the next level. Their top choices weren't there. And we know they're businessmen. We know Mansueto's a businessman. You're not going to go sign someone out of desperation and make it 10 times worse. You've got a guy in Klopas who's here. People know him. Media knows him. Fans know him for better or worse. Might as well just keep him around for another year, slap together a coaching staff for him, and then go out and look for a top choice head coach this offseason. Or be in discussions with them right now, depending on what their current job status is, right? So I think that's the case there, and so we need to focus the blame, if we are placing blame, or focus the criticism on the current coaching staff. Your defense has taken a huge step back. Gee, that's what happens when C.J. Brown gets moved to the front office, I suppose. Your set pieces have been horrible, and you've got a new set piece coach. I wonder if he's just there to do offensive set pieces, which he's still terrible because I don't think they've scored on an offensive set piece yet this season. Maybe on a recycle, but not directly, or off of a set play. But anyway, that needs to be addressed. I really don't know what the communications are between Klopas and his assistant coaches. I haven't seen any reporting on it. But I did see during that Atlanta game, they're all sitting on the bench, talking, really gesturing with their arms going up and down and back and forth. They were clearly clueless on what to do and how to react in that Atlanta game. And any of those subs came way too late to make any sort of an impact on it. And again, they don't know how to get the best out of Brian Gutierrez. They don't know how to get the best out of Xherdan Shaqiri. They don't know how to coach Xherdan Shaqiri and tell him stop just sending 50-50 long balls forward, because he's turning any possession they have into a 50-50 possession. And yeah, let's take a look at these subs. Shaqiri comes in the 60th for Gutierrez. Kind of had to make that move because Guti was ineffective. Pineda comes in for Jimenez in the 75th. Again, Jimenez doing nothing. Koutsias comes in for Jonathan Dean in the 75th minute to try and spark some offense. And Chris Mueller comes in for Aragoni in the 75th minute. So a triple sub in the 75th minute to try and get things going. But you know what, again, when you don't have an offensive identity, you can put Pineda in. He's going to play defensively first because you're not coaching him to push forward and start looking for through balls. And when you have Mueller and Koutsias who need to be linking up, but yet you don't want to say, like, you know, let's get the ball to Mueller when you've still got Haile Selassie calling for the ball a lot, and then you bring in Tom Barlow in the 82nd just to try and create something out of nothing. Well, none of that's going to work, and then you add the red card to it. So those were your substitutes there that were a little too late, even though it was the 75th minute. It was still too late. At that point, I think you were already down 2-0, and you're already struggling at that point. So again, the subs are late, the tactics aren't there, the red card puts you even further behind the 8 ball, and that's why I think you got to focus in on the coaching staff if you're playing the blame game at this point in the season, which, yeah, I am. I'm not ready to put the blame fully on the front office because the front office, yes, they have said it. We've learned from our mistakes. It's taking time to correct them. And I'll give them that. I really think they are. They're signing better players. They are being more aggressive within MLS, and they're identifying their targets, and they're not signing out of desperation either. So I will give the front office a little more credit. If Klopas continues to coach this team into the 2025 season, then I will shift all my blame up the chain into the front office, because at that point it's showing me they have the inability to hire a quality coach. And I will give a little blame on them for the quality of player they're bringing in, because the best players they've brought in, arguably Haile Selassie and Aragoni, are just from the sister club in Lugano. I really like the Gutman acquisition. Love the Kellen Acosta acquisition. That is really what's tempering my criticism of the front office because of how highly Acosta spoke about his meetings here with the Chicago Fire organization from Mansueto on down. But they probably overpaid for Kuipers, and that's just a sense of them having poor business dealings in the past and then having to overpay to get their DP striker. So I am not at the point where I'm going to assess blame on the front office, but we need to see what their plan is for this coaching staff and for an extra DP spot and some roster building over the next season. And then, if there is no change, then you can start talking about the front office failing, and then you can start talking about the owner needing to step in. Though I do kind of like the fact that Mansueto is not an activist owner in that sense. He is completely involved in a lot of the other work within the Fire organization. He was very responsive to a lot of what the fan wants and demands were, but I'm glad he's not as involved in the day-to-day, like, I want to start these players, I want to sign this guy, let's go out and get him, blah, 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 type of work. All right. Speaking of coaching, let's look at some of the quotes from Frank Klopas and see if you think that you agree with me that we need to put some blame on the coaching staff here, if not the majority of it. And then we'll look at some stats before we move on to the next match. All right. This is Frank Klopas' post-game quote on what he thinks made it difficult for the team to get chances against Atlanta United. Quote, "Well, I mean, obviously, look, it all starts from keeping a clean sheet and timely goals. I thought the first half was more difficult for us. I think that in building up our play and doing the things that we've talked about, but then I think as a team, when you look at the moments that we give up goals, puts us in really difficult situations. Obviously, 44th minute out of nowhere, and it's stuff that we talked about and stuff like that." I'm just going to pause and let that sink in a little bit, because he's all over the place on that quote. And hey, maybe this is part of the problem, that whatever Frank thinks the team needs to do, he can't communicate it to his players, because if that's how he talks to the media, I can only imagine what he's saying to these guys in a very emotional and heated and type of training session, right? I mean, obviously, look, it all starts from keeping a clean sheet and timely goals. What are you talking about? You haven't kept a clean sheet all season. Timely goals? You're giving up goals late? You're doing the same thing over and over again, Frank. Well, we talked about it. I don't care that you've talked about it. First of all, talking about it should be the absolute bare minimum. What have you done to stop it instead of just talking about it? A lot of ridiculous stuff here. And he says, obviously, 44th minute out of nowhere. No, that's not out of nowhere. You've been counterattacked on all season. And your defense, your transition defense, has been garbage for at least the last year and a half. So don't tell me it's coming out of nowhere when it repeatedly happens to the Chicago Fire. Frank continues, "But I think those goals become costly when you're on the road and you're playing against a good team." Yeah, no doubt, Frank. I think the second half, we came out, and the first 20-25 minutes, we got in very good spots. But then our ability in the final third, that little bit of creativity, ability of players to take guys one-on-one, beat players, get quality crosses, make things happen. We didn't have that ability to do so, and then obviously we gave up a second goal. Again, for me, it was a tough one. Okay, yes, at least you're seeing what I'm seeing here, Frank. You did get into some good spots in the second half. There were a lot of passes in the attacking third, and we'll talk about some of the stats there. But yeah, the problem was there were no passes into the 18-yard box. Or I shouldn't say no passes. I think there were maybe six passes into the 18-yard box, and then passes within the 18-yard box, there were maybe only 2 more. So no ball movement in the most dangerous area of the field. And he wraps up his thought on this. And then the red card, was one that, in moments like that, making a play like that put the team in a really difficult spot. Then we took a risk. We tried to push the game the best that we could. And then you open up yourself like we did late in the game. But it all starts, I think, for me, just, going into halftime 0-0. It's a lot different than giving up a goal like that. We woke up a little bit in the second half, but it's not enough. It wasn't enough. Well, gee, Frank, it's been 6 games is not enough. What are you doing about it? I'd be fine if you started calling out players. I know he probably won't do that. It's not in his persona, but I think he really needs to. At this point, you got to start calling out your players, find some other way to motivate them. And yeah, what better way to motivate them than say in the press, yeah, this guy's not carrying his weight. He's not playing well. He needs to step it up. Then again, you do that, you open yourself up for some criticism from your team as well. But as far as that last little bit that he said, it all starts, I think, for me, just, going to halftime 0-0. Okay, you can go into halftime 0-0, or you can go into halftime 1-0, giving up a goal in the last minute of the first half. But the fact is, you didn't do anything different in the second half. So whether you were down 0-0, or whether you were down 1-0, or whether you were up 1-0, you didn't do anything different to affect the outcome of that game. So I think that's kind of a non-starter. He also had quotes about Selassie playing on the left wing and Kuipers getting him the ball more. I think we know the Kuipers thing, so let me skip that quote. Here's what he said about playing Marin Haile Selassie on the right wing. I switched the guys up. I knew the right side was the side with Brooks Lennon and Saba Lobjanidze, that they overloaded that side, but it's also a side that they are vulnerable in transition moments. And we started the game with him out wide and Fabi Herbers on the other side because they are strong with their outside backs getting forward. We wanted to free up Gutierrez more in the middle, but that wasn't working. And we switched it quickly because we were getting really not lack of pressure in the middle. Hang on, let me read that again. We switched it quickly because we were getting really not lack of pressure in the middle. Okay, I don't know what he's trying to say there. But he continues. So Maran, I think, has the ability, even in the past, that we've put a lot on the left at times. He likes coming inside on his right foot, but I think he's comfortable playing on either side. But this was more of a tactical situation, the way we started the game. There's a couple things I don't like about this quote. He puts Haile Selassie on the other side because he likes the matchup. So Haile Selassie is not a good defender. At least he's not known for it. And he puts him over there in part because he wants him to match up with Brooks Lennon and Lobjanidze. Sorry, I keep pronouncing his name incorrectly. Saba. So I don't like that. I think Frank outthought himself, and the coaching staff were thinking too much on this one. And I don't like the fact that the team is adjusting their offense to the other team. You need to know what you're doing well as a team. And your offense needs to be consistent, right? I get if you want to move guys around or maybe change things up to try and have a better defensive matchup. But the fact that you're changing now your offense based on what the other team's lineup is, not because you're trying to exploit a defensive a matchup there, a mismatch there, but he's saying he wanted Haile Selassie to play against Brooks Lennon and Saba Lobjanidze. I'm never going to get his name right. Sorry. So to me, you're overthinking things, you're moving things around, and you saw Selassie didn't stay on his right side. He was drifting centrally a lot. So, yeah, what does it say? He likes coming inside on his right foot, but he was drifting centrally. And yeah, this is weird. Selassie plays on the left wing. He likes cutting inside on his right foot. That's fine, but again, you're pinching too close to Kuiper. So I just think this was a tactical switch that you overthought and didn't do anything for it. Klopas also talked about playing some of the best Eastern Conference teams in the first few matches. He talks about giving up goals, at a bad time. But dude, again, enough with when you're giving up the goals. You're not doing anything to fix it. And there's not much more that I want to comment on the quote sheet there from Frank Klopas. Let's get into the statistics. Selassie also gave a post-game presser there and gave a bunch of quotes. Nothing I want to get into today, but let's look at the stats. Chicago ended up with 48% of the possession, and these are according to MLSsoccer.com. 11 shots, 3 shots on goal for a whopping 0.7 expected goals. Meanwhile, Atlanta, 21 shots, 7 on target, 4.3 expected goals. So Atlanta scores 3 goals and still underperforms their XG. Wow, that's great for them. Fire with 4 block shots, 475 total passes, 84% passing accuracy. So that is a lot of safe passes, a lot of defensive third passes, and also a lot of safe passes. They had a lot of passes in the attacking third. So this is where the stats may not follow the trends here, they had a lot of ball movement in the attacking third, but it was in a beautiful semicircle shape around Atlanta's 18-yard box. And if you go find the Twitter account, MLS Stat is the handle, and it's MLS Statistics and Analysis, some great post-game charts, and you can see all the ball movement around Atlanta's 18 and only 6 balls played into the box. It was just an indictment of the Chicago Fire's inability or lack of desire to play the ball into the Atlanta 18-yard box, where their striker, their $12 million man, is the most dangerous. And yeah, thank you, MLS Statistics and Analysis. You're doing great work. Love the charts. Please, he just hit 200 followers on Twitter, and that's a crime. Follow him at MLS Stat, and you'll see everything I'm talking about. And not just this game, but others. So the Fire there, yeah, they have a good passing numbers, but the eye test shows the passes were ineffective. Only 4 corners, 9 total crosses, 2 offside, 7 aerial duels won compared to Atlanta's 14. And when you think you've got guys like Turan, Chihos, Acosta, Kuipers, you should be winning more aerial duels. Let's see, only 0.7 expected goals. Chris Brady comes up with 4 saves. Poor Chris Brady. Like, you can't expect your goalie to make a save on these balls that are inside the 6-yard box. That's all on the defense at that point. And Brady has done his darnest to keep the Chicago Fire in games, but there's only so much he can do when he's being peppered with 21 shots here, right? Fire committed 5 fouls, a yellow, and a red. So that is the statistical breakdown of things. And that is all we're going to say about the Fire's atrocious 3-0 loss at Atlanta United. Now at this time, I want to recognize our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best. Go out to your local 7-Eleven, get a few bottles of Skira, bring some to the Fire game this weekend so that way you can be hydrated while you're cheering on the team to what's hopefully a victory against Houston here in Chicago at Soldier Field this upcoming April 6th. Before we get into our preview against Houston, it is now time to welcome in our featured guest, John Donovan. And real quick, John sends me his clip every week, and it's usually the sound file is just, new recording with the date, whatever it is. Or he'll just send me an email with no subject line, and I'll see the attachment, and I'll add it to the file. But this week, John felt the need to put the subject line of the email and the title of the sound file as Atlanta Massacre. And yeah, that's certainly what it felt like. So, John, I appreciate your candidness and your bluntness with how you titled the sound clip in the email this week. And without further ado, we're going to turn things over to John. Take it away.
Nick, John Donovan here talking about the Chicago Fire and the MLS. Nick, the Chicago Fire got whooped 3-0 against Atlanta. And I listen to the programs in Spanish. I don't like the English commentators. And one commentator said, and I totally agree with him, that Atlanta and some of these teams are just in a different level than the Chicago Fire. Now, when you go, I look at the players, I look at the skill, I look at their winning background. We've got some winners on the squad. Kuipers is a winner. I'm sure Selassie was very good. Herbers is a good bench guy. Acosta has had a couple of cups. He's been on the World Cup team. Sijos, I don't know much about. Tehran had a bad game. Arjan had a good game. Dean had a good game. Brady got really roughed up in the goal. But overall, I agree with the announcer. The Chicago Fire, as long as Klopas is coaching, is in a lower level than the rest of the MLS. I just looked at their schedule, and they don't have any easy games coming up. They play Houston next, I believe, in Chicago. And Houston is a good team. Ben Olsen's a good coach. I think a lot of people think that you got good players, you got a good team. That's not true. It's like saying you have a lot of good athletes, you'll be a good team. No. You have to have everything together. You've got to have coaching, meshing in with smart players and talent. And where we're missing it, obviously, Joe Mansueto made a big, huge mistake in bringing back Klopas for the fourth time. I mean, this season, in my opinion, is just not going to come out. Now, we might win a few games, say 3 in a row, some point along this season, but then we will die at the end. That's Klopas. That's what he's been doing for years. Normally, he doesn't make it through the whole season. So, but Mansueto made such a stink about naming Frank to the squad that I believe he'll probably stay with them. Plus, he's a billionaire that doesn't like to double pay anybody. So the first 15 minutes of the game was all Atlanta. I kind of had to take a double take at the game. Now, the Fire have nothing to lose. They've got to get up in the standings, and they were playing in a shell. It really was very hard to understand. I kind of looked at this game optimistically with Gutierrez playing by himself without Shaqiri in the middle. And to be honest with you, Gutierrez was bad. He is not the player that everybody foresees him to be. He's a very, maybe off the bench MLS player. I don't think he's the center mid that we thought he was. He's had some good movements last year against Miami, but when he was in with a talented team like Atlanta, he just couldn't. He couldn't compete. I was watching him. You know, good center mids, they are the quarterback of the squad, and they're the ones that constantly have to work at getting open so that you can get the ball to them. Now, Atlanta had a young guy named Ulma that was spectacular. He was working. He was moving the ball. He was changing sides. He was always working to get that pass. Where Gutierrez seemed to be kind of lost. He would assume the midfield post, and then you'd see him up high to the right, and he couldn't get passes. So I don't know what's happened to his game. He did, I think, in the under 20s or under 19s or whatever they got going. He did do fairly well, but he is not the center mid for the future for the squad. If they can get anything for him, I would get it as soon as you could. You know, what has he got? 2 goals this year. They've been playing him all over the pitch, which has been bad. But they pulled him out and put in Shaqiri, and what do you think you get with Shaqiri? You get an $8.2 million mistake on the field, and Klopas keeps, going in that direction. I feel somewhat bad for Kuipers. With Klopas as the coach, you don't recognize the talent you got on the bench and the way you mesh talent. Now he has Mueller on the bench, who is really a clever left wing. He gets the ball in the middle or gets a shot. When he played for Orlando, he used to make me very nervous. But, they don't start the right guys. Having Herbers out there he's a very good substitute, but he's not a starter. And he gets himself some stupid yellow cards. He went down on a straight fall in this game that ended up in a goal for Atlanta. And he got up and started griping with the ref. And, of course, the ref pulls out a yellow card. And so his availability has got to be coming up very soon. I think he's got pretty close to 6 yellow cards. But, as far as the Fire goes, the defense looked bad. They started Carlos Terran. And, Terran a year ago at the beginning of the season was a wonderful player. Then he got hurt. They forced him back into the game. He got hurt again this year, or he didn't have that meniscus worked on. He just looks lost out there. He's making some real idiot plays, and the red card he took was really a red card. It was a clear and cut red card. I don't. Again, back to the smarts and the skill. You've got Olmsberg on the bench, who's a smart guy from Dartmouth. You've got Pineda on the bench, who's a smart guy from North Carolina. Those two should be your center fullbacks. Cejos should be coming off the bench. He's not looking good anymore. I mean, what is he, 34, 35? He looks like he's wandering on the field. Dean looked fairly good. Working up the field, Acosta did not have as one of his better games. Almeida ate him up in the middle. And Jimenez, I really was shocked to hear his name. I didn't even know he was in the game for a good 25 minutes. So the Fire and Klopas just aren't getting it. I don't mind starting Haile Selassie up tight to the right, but I'd bring Mueller in to the left. Gutierrez is, try him again, but I think they had a young man by the name of Aloha, who, I got the name wrong, who is a pretty good player. But we'll just have to see how that works out. Next game against Houston, it's going to be a tough game. Ben Olsen does not lose easy. I know that he had some tough times at DC, but he's a better coach than Klopas. Players of the game for the Fire, there are none. Honest to Lord, they just didn't have anybody out there. Poor Brady just got every goal was a good goal. He didn't have a shot at any of them. I was really impressed with the center mid from Atlanta. There's a couple of guys that I've kind of focused on this year. That Russell Rowe from Columbus is really good. Sullivan from Philly is really good. Young guys. And this Ulma, very good center mid. I mean, him along with Almeida is really a tough combo. Anybody who beats Atlanta, man, they've got a squad. So, I don't know what we've got to look forward to. They've got Atlanta coming back into Chicago. They got a few games at home, but that doesn't seem to really make much of a difference. As long as Klopas is going to be on that bench, we're going to have difficulties. We don't have a good, thorough... I mean, when you look at around the coaches of the league, they're all very good. They're very competitive. They know what they're doing. And we have a guy that's been fired 4 times. So, hello, Mike. Hope everything's going well for you. Nick, thank you very much. I'm a little bit talkative today. I'm sorry, but the game was just a dud. Take care.
Thank you, John. Always appreciate your contributions and your support of the show. And now we move on. And we hopefully never have to talk about that Atlanta United result again. We move on to the Chicago Fire welcoming a real hot Houston Dynamo team right here. And I'm not just talking about looks, people. Get that thought out of your head here. The Houston Dynamo are hot. They are coming in on a 3-game win streak. They beat San Jose this past weekend 2-1. They went to Colorado the week before and won 1-0. And they won a home game against Portland 1-0 before that. So they are in fine form. They have 3 wins, a loss, and a draw on the season. And are looking to extend that in Chicago, and they are looking to do that against, again, a Chicago team that is struggling. But the good thing is, Houston, despite having this fine run of form at this point, and doing it without Hector Herrera, Houston is also a team struggling on offense. They have 6 goals in their 5 games here, and they have never won a game by more than 1 goal. So, actually, wait a minute. Am I counting correctly? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, only 5 games on the season for Houston. They've had a number of Champions Cup games in there as well, so we can't discount that. They had a couple Champions Cup games against against Seattle and against Columbus. So they've had some tired legs, and so Ben Olsen has had to have them winning in different ways. But like I said, they are not the offensive. They're not doing it through offense. They're doing just enough to get these wins, to get these 3 points here, right? They've never scored more than 2 goals this season, and they have never won by more than a single goal. They are the 3rd worst team in expected goals in Major League Soccer, according to the website FBref. They, however, are also one of the best defensive teams in the league. They are allowing the lowest opposing expected goals in the league, and they're allowing the least amount of shots on target in the league. So they, as poor as they are on offense, they're making up for it on defense and solid play. By the way, the Chicago Fire, on the other hand here, have the highest opposing expected goal and goals allowed in the league. So you've got a Houston team who has no offense, and you have a Chicago team who is really poor on defense. What is going to break in this match? I hope it's not the Chicago Fire defense, but that remains to be determined. Maybe we get Pineda and Salquist in there with Chihos and Tehran being suspended or getting some rest. What players do we need to keep an eye on here? The Houston Dynamo in their last match lined up in a 4-2-3-1. They have Steve Clark in goal, an experienced MLS goalkeeper. A lot of people thought he was washed after he was let go from Portland, but he is having himself a solid season with the Dynamo. Going from left to right, at least according to their last match, Escobar Mikhail Svac. I'm going to butcher another name, and it got cut off on my notes here, so I can't even say the whole thing. Dorsev is your right back there. Solid back line. Not a lot of big-name MLS players, but the stats indicate, solid back line. Now, here's a couple MLSers you know. Artur and Jan Gregush as your defensive midfielders. Artur, formerly of Columbus, and Gregush, formerly of Minnesota. They have found starting roles and continued success here in Houston, and they are a big part of why the opposing teams have such a hard time scoring and getting shots off. Attacking midfielders Alivu, Bassi, and Karaskia, and striker Sebastian Ferreira. Now that again was their lineup last match. There are other players who can come off the bench who may get some extra minutes as head coach Ben Olsen may see fit. They've got Latif Blessing, another MLS household name, who can come off the bench and maybe be effective against the Chicago Fire. Specifically, though, keep an eye on Michel, however he pronounces it, their center back. He actually is 4th in Major League Soccer in touches. He has touched the ball almost more than any other player in the league. Gregush and Artur are as solid as a D-mid duo as you'll see in the MLS, as I mentioned. And attacking midfielder Amini Bassi led Houston with 10 goals last season. And he hasn't scored yet this year, but if he starts going in this match, I mean, this could go the way of the Atlanta match real quick. The man is talented. And, of course, Sebastian Ferreira is as good a striker as Houston needs to continue to get results. So those are the guys you're kind of looking for to make an impact. Coco Karaskia on the wing, of course, as well. Player with some international experience. So those are the names that stick out on this Houston roster. How are the Fire going to get a result? I don't know. I don't know because we haven't seen anything that's worked for them. I think that the Fire need to maintain possession in this game, and they've tried to do it at home. They've done it a little bit. They had some good spells of possession at Atlanta even, but unless the Fire can start playing better balls to Hugo Kuipers, none of their possession is going to matter. None of their counterattacking is going to matter. Houston is the perfect team for the Chicago Fire to play right now. A team that struggles on offense, a team that is mid to bottom third of the league in progressing the ball and progressive passes, dribbling, things of that nature. They do not have Hector Herrera, who's been out with a knee injury. He was the one that would really escalate all those stats for the Houston Dynamo. He's the player that would be on the ball directing things. So they are having to rely on more of a team approach. Right now, with the 6 goals they've scored, it's been 5 different players who've scored it. So they really aren't a team that focuses on one person at this point in time. So it's the perfect team for the Chicago Fire to be playing at this point in the season. You know, the negative one in me is like, yeah, and the Fire are still going to blow it, right? It's like that old Saturday Night Live Celebrity Jeopardy sketch. There's no way you can mess this up. Now let's see how you've managed to mess it up. There's no way the Fire could lose another game. Now let's see how they lose another game. No, I'm not going to say that. I actually am feeling a lot better about this match. The Fire are desperate for a result, for a win. Right? A result isn't going to do it. They need a win here at home. I think Klopas is finally going to realize his lineup isn't working. I think we're going to see Chris Mueller hopefully get the start, if not play significant minutes in this match. I think you're going to see Xherdan Shaqiri starting alongside Brian Gutierrez at home and have Fabian Herbers and Marin Haile Selassie coming off the bench. That is what I would do to try and to jumpstart this offense and to get some more service into Hugo Kuipers. And I'm thinking maybe I'm just trying to will it into existence that Klopas is going to feel the same way. And then you've got to keep, you're struggling for bodies on the back line here, so you've got to keep Dean and Aragoni as your outside backs, and then you've got Chihos and Pineda, or Chihos and Salquist, with Pineda coming in off the bench to either sub in for Acosta, Jimenez, Navarro, or whoever it is on the back line, right? I wouldn't mind seeing Federico Navarro start alongside Kellen Acosta in this match, especially after Jimenez's forgettable performance. Nothing. I think the phrase is whatevering performance against Atlanta. He's just not it, and he just doesn't care anymore, it seems. Or at least he's playing like he doesn't care. So that's how I would switch things up in this match, and hopefully Acosta and Fede Navarro can hold enough of that Houston attack back in order for the rest of the offense to get the ball to Kuipers. I'm going to predict it. I'm going to predict a 2-1 win here for the Chicago Fire. As negative as we have been, the one thing we've seen from this team, at least from a handful of players, is their fight, is their grit, is their not going to give up. You saw it in the Montreal game, even in the Atlanta game. They were pushing for a goal, pushing for something. And I think they still are going to have that coming into this home match. If this was an away game against a conference opponent, who knows? But this is a non-conference opponent who is sitting pretty well in their table and may want to take this opportunity to rest and not go all out and really settle for a road draw. And hopefully, and I think the Chicago Fire can take advantage of that. I see at some point in this game a Chris Mueller to Hugo Kuipers assist, and I think Kuipers gets at least one goal in this match, and the Fire end up with a 2-1 victory. I'm going to leave you all on a positive note. I think that's all we need to say about things. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think on social media at GlassHouseSoccer. Or you can email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. Rate, review, like, subscribe, share the show, grow the show. Do everything you can to continue growing the conversation around the Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer. Be on the lookout for me jumping in on Goals TV, goals.tv, a new soccer streaming platform, where I do a 10,000-foot view of the scoreboard and standings at around Major League Soccer. Go check that out, and keep an eye out for me appearing on some of the Houston Dynamo podcasts coming up as well. I was just invited by the old soccer guy from Houston Dynamo to join his show, so keep a lookout for that as well. And as always, let's go Fire.